Emma began to notice strange changes in her husband Mark's behavior. He started coming home late from work, constantly making excuses to avoid conversations with her, and frequently receiving phone calls at odd hours. First, Emma tried to convince herself that Mark might just be under stress from work. But her instincts as a wife told her that something wasn't right. She observed that Mark was no longer interested in their family conversations like he used to be. Dinners, once a cherished time for them to share and connect, had become quiet and awkward. Mark often excused himself, claiming he had extra work to do, and the look in his eyes when he glanced at her seemed to carry a hidden burden. Emma felt hurt and uneasy, yet she still wanted to believe in her husband. She decided to observe more closely and refrained from jumping to conclusions. One evening, when Mark came home late and appeared visibly unsettled, Emma noticed a stark difference. He no longer wanted to share about his day or his work. Mark seemed distant, and the intimacy between them had slowly faded away. That night, Emma lay awake, restless with doubt and worry. She wondered what was happening in her husband's life that she had no knowledge of. One morning, while Mark was in the shower, his phone buzzed. Emma accidentally noticed the name of the sender. It was Julia, Mark's female boss. She wasn't someone who typically checked her husband's phone, but something compelled her to pick it up that day. The message she read shattered her heart. Its content was filled with affectionate undertones and an excessive level of intimacy between Mark and Julia, something she had never thought possible. Emma felt her head spin, as if her entire world had just collapsed. She sat down on a chair, trying to breathe steadily to keep herself from crying aloud. She had been betrayed. Pain and disappointment flooded her mind, but she knew she couldn't let her emotions take over at that moment. Emma decided to remain silent and not confront Mark immediately. Instead, she understood that she needed more evidence and a clear plan. That day, Emma went to work with a heavy heart. Everything around her seemed meaningless. Every glance, every word from her colleagues felt like a weight pressing down on her. She tried to mask her pain and act normal, but inside, her heart felt like it had been pierced by 1,000 daggers. She knew she needed to act, but she didn't yet know how. Emma began her journey to gather evidence of her husband's affair. She hired an experienced private investigator to confirm the nature of Mark and Julia's relationship. In the days that followed, Emma lived in a constant state of anxiety and pain. Each evening, when Mark came home with increasingly implausible excuses, Emma remained silent, quietly observing and waiting for the investigator's report. The investigator provided Emma with photos and audio recordings of Mark and Julia together. They met at coffee shops, dined out, and even shared intimate gestures that only lovers would exchange. Emma's heart broke as she looked at the undeniable evidence. But she knew she had to stay strong. She didn't want to act impulsively. And more importantly, she needed to be sure she wasn't overreacting or suspecting without cause. The evenings passed in tense silence. Emma watched Mark, who continued to act as if everything was normal. But now every smile he gave her filled her with disgust. She wondered how the man she loved and trusted could betray her so cruelly. Many nights, Emma lay awake, staring at the photos and listening to the recordings, each piece of evidence slowly eroding the image of the ideal husband she once held in her heart. After gathering sufficient evidence, Emma decided to confront Mark. She chose an evening when they were both home, free from any outside distractions. Emma calmly asked Mark to explain what she had discovered. First, Mark tried to deny everything, claiming it was all just a misunderstanding. But with the undeniable evidence in Emma's hands, Mark had no room to escape the truth. Finally, faced with irrefutable proof, Mark admitted to his relationship with Julia. He hung his head, unable to meet his wife's gaze. He tried to justify his actions, saying it was a moment of weakness, that he never meant to hurt Emma, and that things had spiraled out of his control. But for Emma, the betrayal couldn't be so easily explained away. Emma didn't scream, cry, or lash out at Mark. She simply looked at him with cold, disappointed eyes. She told him she needed time to think about everything that had happened and decided to leave the house for a while so Mark could reflect on what he had done. Emma didn't want her emotions to cloud her judgment. She knew she needed a better plan for her future, for herself, and perhaps even for Mark, if he was truly willing to change. Mark watched helplessly as Emma packed her belongings. A deep sense of powerlessness overwhelmed him. He wanted to stop her, to beg her to stay, but Mark knew he had shattered the trust of the woman he loved. As Emma walked out the door, Mark was left alone, consumed by his thoughts and the gnawing regret that haunted every passing moment. After leaving her home, Emma decided to find a quiet place to reflect and plan for her future. She rented a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, a cozy space where she could regain her peace of mind without distractions. The apartment had a single bedroom, a living room, and a small balcony overlooking lush green fields. It was exactly the sanctuary she needed, a space where she could reconnect with herself without the haunting memories of her past life. Every morning, Emma woke up and reminded herself that she needed to be stronger. She started creating a list of things she wanted to do, things she had neglected because she had been so focused on Mark and their family. Emma realized that she had lost herself in the marriage and that it was time to rediscover who she was. She decided not to simply walk away or seek revenge on Mark. Instead, she wanted him to understand the consequences of his actions and the value of the family he had taken for granted. Emma also made the decision to confront Julia directly. She wanted to know who this woman was and why she had interfered in her life. Emma didn't intend to hurt anyone, but she felt the need to stand up for herself and protect her own rights. She wanted Julia to understand that she was not a weak or easily broken woman. Emma aimed to exude confidence and strength, making Julia realize that what she was doing was wrong and that her actions had real consequences. This was no longer about anger or betrayal. It was about Emma reclaiming her dignity and ensuring that her voice was heard. Emma sent a carefully worded invitation to Julia, asking to meet at a quiet cafe. Julia was surprised to receive a message from Emma but agreed to meet. When she arrived, Julia felt tense, unsure of how to face Mark's wife. She had braced herself for a confrontation filled with tears and anger, but what she didn't expect was Emma's calm and confident demeanor. Emma sat there, composed and self-assured. There was no trace of rage or hatred in her expression. Instead, she looked at Julia with resolute strength. Emma began by asking Julia about her relationship with Mark, not to blame her, but to better understand the situation. She wanted to know if Julia truly loved Mark or if it was just a fleeting affair. Emma didn't seek explicit details but needed to comprehend the intentions of the woman who had intruded into her life. Julia was caught off guard and visibly flustered by Emma's composure. She hadn't anticipated this calm and collected approach. Julia admitted that she knew Mark was a married man, but she believed he was unhappy in his marriage and that their relationship was a form of escape for both of them. Julia tried to justify her actions by claiming that she and Mark were both adults who had made a choice. Emma listened, though her heart ached deeply. She knew she couldn't change the past, but she could control how she confronted it. Emma firmly told Julia that while she couldn't undo what had already happened, she would not allow it to continue. She made it clear that Mark needed to take responsibility for his family, and if Julia truly cared about him, she should let him return to his family and work to repair the damage he had caused. Julia was left speechless, lowering her head in silence. Emma's strength and determination made her realize she had no rightful place in Mark's life, and she didn't want to continue hurting the woman sitting across from her. In that moment, Julia saw Emma not as a rival but as a woman of dignity and resilience. And for Emma, it was a step forward in reclaiming control over her life. Emma made it clear that she didn't want to start any kind of war with Julia but couldn't stand by and allow this disrespectful behavior to continue. Her confidence and self-respect radiated, leaving Julia overwhelmed with an indescribable sense of shame. For the first time, Julia truly realized the weight of her mistake in being part of this affair. Facing Emma made her feel small and weak. Emma didn't demean or criticize Julia. Instead, she spoke about her feelings, her family, and the trust she had placed in Mark. Emma stated firmly that she wouldn't allow this relationship to continue destroying her family. She emphasized that Mark needed to take responsibility for his actions, and Julia needed to acknowledge that it was wrong for her to have been involved. Emma made it clear that she wouldn't stop until everything was resolved fairly and appropriately. Julia was overwhelmed by Emma's calm and strength. Unable to say much in response, she sat in silence, listening. Emma's resilience and poise made Julia realize that she had no rightful place in Mark's life. Overcome with regret and shame, Julia lowered her head and left the cafe, carrying a heavy sense of remorse. For Emma, the encounter was not about winning or losing but about reclaiming her dignity and ensuring her voice was heard. And for Julia, it was a humbling moment of reflection and accountability. After the meeting with Julia, Emma decided to move out of the house for a while to give Mark the space to reflect on his actions and realize the value of their family. She packed her belongings and moved into the small apartment she had rented earlier. During this time, Emma focused on herself, rediscovering the joys of life that she had overlooked while being so focused on Mark and their family. Emma dedicated time to self-care, joining yoga and meditation classes to find peace within her soul. She reconnected with friends, participated in social activities, and sought happiness in the little things. She understood that only by becoming strong and content herself could she make the right decisions about her future. Meanwhile, Mark stayed home alone, feeling the emptiness and loneliness without Emma's presence. He began to realize that his actions had not only shattered his wife's trust, but had also caused him to lose the woman he truly loved. Dinner without Emma felt tasteless, and the house became silent and cold. Mark felt deep regret and knew that if he wanted a chance at redemption, he needed to change and prove his sincerity to Emma. Mark sought advice from close friends and began attending therapy sessions to better understand himself and why he had betrayed Emma. He realized that a simple apology wouldn't be enough. Determined to take meaningful steps, Mark decided to leave his current job, where his affair with Julia had started, and look for a new one, a fresh start to demonstrate his commitment to change. Emma knew this was a time for both of them to reflect. She wasn't sure if she could forgive Mark, but she was certain that she wouldn't allow herself to be hurt again. Her decision was to live for herself and pursue happiness, regardless of what the future held. She no longer feared or worried about what lay ahead because she knew she deserved to find joy and fulfillment, with or without Mark. Time away from Emma gave Mark a chance to reflect on the things he had either overlooked or ignored in the past. Living alone in an empty house made him deeply feel the loss he had caused. He missed their evenings together over dinner, their conversations, and the sound of Emma's laughter. The weight of his regret pressed heavily on his soul, and Mark realized he couldn't continue living like this. Mark began to let go of his bad habits. He made an effort to change, starting by waking up early, exercising, and spending more time focusing on positive thoughts. He also began participating in social activities, hoping to contribute to something meaningful and ease his guilty conscience. Determined to make a fresh start, Mark quit his old job, the place that had led him to his mistakes. He applied to a new company where he could begin again, free from the ties of past relationships. Mark also started attending therapy sessions to better understand himself and the reasons behind his betrayal of the woman he loved most. Each session felt like peeling away layers of pretense, forcing him to confront his true self. Mark's motivation to change wasn't solely for Emma but also for himself. He knew that if he wanted even a chance at Emma's forgiveness, he had to become a better person, someone she could trust again. He sent messages of apology to Emma, expressing his remorse and longing to make amends, but she kept her distance and didn't respond. Mark understood that he needed to be patient and show his sincerity through actions, not just words. He committed himself to proving that he had truly changed, even if it took time for Emma to believe in him again. While Mark was working to change, Emma was also on her own journey to heal the wounds in her heart. She began to savor the moments of freedom she had once overlooked. Each morning, Emma woke up to sunlight streaming through her window, went for walks in the park near her apartment, and embraced the freshness of life. The time away from Mark helped her realize that she could find happiness on her own, without relying on anyone else. Emma joined a yoga class, where she met and bonded with other women. Together, they shared their stories, struggles, and joys. These new friendships made Emma feel less lonely and helped her regain trust in life. Her friends became a source of encouragement and a safe space where she could unburden her worries and sorrows. Emma also began pursuing passions she had once set aside. She took up painting again, a hobby she had loved deeply before getting married. Afternoons spent at her easel, with the freedom of each brushstroke, gave Emma a sense of liberation. She gradually felt stronger, no longer shackled by the pain or betrayal caused by Mark. However, there were still moments when Emma felt an emptiness inside. Some nights, she sat alone by the window, thinking of Mark. She wondered if he had truly changed, if he genuinely regretted what he had done. Yet Emma knew that regardless of the answer, she wouldn't allow herself to be hurt again. She had rediscovered herself, and she was determined never to lose that sense of self again, whether her future included Mark or not. Emma knew she deserved happiness and strength, and she wouldn't settle for anything less. After weeks of striving to change and better himself, Mark decided it was time to meet Emma, apologize, and show his remorse. He knew this was his final chance to prove to her that he had truly changed. Mark reached out to Emma, requesting a meeting, not to justify his mistakes but to express his sincerity and repentance. Emma agreed to meet him at a small cafe they used to visit together. When Mark entered the cafe, he saw Emma sitting in the corner, her calm and confident demeanor still captivating him. Mark walked toward her, his heart pounding with nervousness. He understood that words alone would no longer hold weight unless they were backed by genuine change. Mark began by apologizing to Emma. He admitted to all his mistakes and told her he didn't expect her to forgive him immediately. He shared the efforts he had made during their time apart, how he had quit his old job, attended therapy sessions, and worked on becoming a better person. Mark didn't hide the challenges he faced, wanting Emma to see the depth of his regret and his determination to start over. Emma listened intently, her gaze fixed on Mark but revealing little emotion. She could sense some sincerity in his words, but her doubts remained. She told Mark that she couldn't easily forget the pain he had caused her, and that she needed more time to think. Emma also made it clear that no matter how much Mark changed, the final decision would be hers and hers alone. She emphasized that she would only choose what was best for herself. Mark nodded, understanding her position. He left the cafe knowing that while he couldn't undo the past, his actions moving forward would determine whether he could regain Emma's trust, or if he had lost her forever. Emma, meanwhile, left with a sense of clarity, knowing she held the power over her own happiness and future. After her meeting with Mark, Emma felt a newfound sense of lightness in her heart. She no longer harbored anger or resentment toward him. Instead, she felt she had grown stronger and was capable of facing what had happened with calmness and maturity. Emma recognized Mark's efforts to change but was also cautious not to easily forget the pain he had caused her. Emma decided to meet Mark again, this time not to dwell on the past but to discuss the future. She wanted to understand if he truly valued family and love and whether he could become someone she could trust again. Emma didn't want to make any decisions without careful consideration. Mark agreed to meet, and the two chose a quiet park to talk. Mark came prepared for anything, knowing this could be his final chance to prove his sincerity. He told Emma he was willing to do whatever it took to make amends, that he would never make the same mistakes again, and that he would always put her and their family first. Emma listened intently, and this time, she could feel the genuineness in Mark's words. She saw a different version of him, a man who truly regretted his actions and wanted a fresh start. However, Emma made it clear that she couldn't make a decision immediately. She needed more time and wanted to see his transformation reflected not only in his words but also in his actions. The conversation ended in silence and mutual understanding. Mark knew he had to continue his efforts, and Emma knew she needed more time to heal. Both of them understood that the future remained uncertain. But at least they had reached a point where they could face each other with honesty and without pretense. After her meeting with Emma, Julia began to feel the weight of her actions, realizing that what she had done had not only disrupted Emma's life but also trapped her in a whirlwind of negative emotions. She felt ashamed and guilty about her relationship with Mark, although she initially believed she had done nothing wrong, thinking it was simply love and a connection between two consenting adults. Her conversation with Emma forced her to reevaluate everything. Julia decided to end her relationship with Mark. She wanted to preserve her dignity and no longer wanted to be the person who destroyed someone else's happiness. She also didn't want to remain stuck in a relationship fraught with conflict and complications. Julia transferred to another branch of her company, hoping that a change of environment would help her start fresh. She also sought support from a therapist to help her navigate this difficult period. Julia didn't want to live haunted by her past or the mistakes she had made. She was determined to become a better person and to learn how to take responsibility for her actions. She knew she couldn't change the past, but she could control how she lived her life moving forward. Through these steps, Julia began to rebuild her sense of self, not as someone defined by her mistakes but as someone striving to grow and live with integrity. Although Emma had faced Mark and listened to his heartfelt apologies, doubts and uncertainties still lingered. She couldn't easily forget the pain Mark had caused. Deep down, she felt unsettled, unsure if she could truly trust Mark again. The memories of his betrayal continued to haunt her, making it impossible to decide immediately whether or not to give him a second chance. Emma confided in her best friend, Laura, who had been by her side throughout the ordeal, offering unwavering support without judgment. Laura advised Emma that she didn't need to make a decision right away. She encouraged Emma to continue living her life, seeking joy and peace before committing to any choice. Laura reminded Emma that, no matter what she decided, her happiness and freedom were what mattered most. Emma reflected on Laura's words. She realized that no one could make the decision for her and that she needed to listen to her own heart. Emma decided to take a break from seeing Mark, giving herself more time to think and find clarity. She didn't want to feel pressured into making a significant decision while so much remained uncertain. During this time, Emma focused on herself, allowing the space to heal and understand what she truly wanted. Whether she chose to move forward with Mark or without him, she resolved that her choice would come from a place of strength and certainty, not fear or obligation. One morning, waking up to the warmth of the sunlight and the cheerful chirping of birds, Emma felt ready to make her decision. She no longer felt uncertain or afraid. After months of reflection, Emma realized that no matter how much Mark changed, she needed to prioritize what was best for herself first. Emma decided to meet Mark one more time. She wanted to clearly communicate her decision and what she expected for the future. The meeting took place at a familiar cafe where they had shared many memories. Mark sat there, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety as he waited for Emma. Emma told Mark that she had thought deeply and decided to give him a chance. However, she emphasized that this would be his final opportunity and that he needed to truly prove to her that he had changed. She also made it clear that she wouldn't forget what had happened, but she was willing to try again if he valued and nurtured their love. Mark felt as though a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He knew this was a chance he couldn't squander and that he would need to put in every effort to ensure he didn't let Emma down again. He promised her that he would work tirelessly to become a better husband and that he would never let weakness lead him astray again. For both Emma and Mark, this was a turning point, a cautious step toward rebuilding trust and love. Knowing that it would take time, patience, and unwavering commitment from them both, Mark understood that words alone couldn't heal the pain Emma had endured and that he needed to prove his commitment through actions. He started with the smallest gestures. Mark took care of Emma by preparing her breakfast, taking her for walks every weekend, and always making time to listen to her thoughts. He wanted Emma to feel that she was the most important person in his life and that he would never let anything hurt her again. Mark also began participating in charitable activities, believing that helping others would give him a deeper understanding of the value of life and love. Together with Emma, he joined a charity organization where they assisted the homeless and supported children in need. Through these activities, Mark felt a sense of renewal. He realized that his repentance wasn't just for Emma, it was also for himself. Emma, though still harboring doubts, could sense the sincerity in Mark's every action. She no longer felt that he was trying to win back her trust with empty promises. Instead, she saw that he was genuinely changing, little by little, and that gave her hope. While she began to open her heart more, Emma maintained a certain distance to protect herself. As time passed, their relationship gradually mended. The cracks were still visible, but both Emma and Mark understood that with mutual effort, they could rebuild what they had lost. They learned to communicate openly, avoiding secrecy and ensuring that small misunderstandings didn't grow into larger issues. Together, they began to appreciate each other more deeply and committed themselves to nurturing their love. Emma knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she had made the right choice for herself. Mark, though still on a path of growth, had proven himself worthy of the chance Emma had given him. Both decided to face the future together, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead with resilience and determination. Rebuilding trust between Emma and Mark was not an easy task. Every day, Mark had to demonstrate that he had truly changed. Each of his actions was carefully considered, not to merely please Emma but to express his sincerity and efforts to make amends. He knew that only through consistent and genuine behavior could he begin to atone for his mistakes. Mark developed a new routine. He woke up early every morning, prepared breakfast, and shared a cup of coffee with Emma. They talked about small, everyday things, work, hobbies, and personal interests. Mark learned to listen earnestly, refraining from giving advice or explanations unless asked. He understood that Emma needed to feel truly heard and understood. Emma began to notice the difference. Mark's small but consistent actions made her feel lighter. He no longer acted defensive or tried to justify his past mistakes. Instead, he patiently listened whenever Emma shared her feelings about the pain she had endured. Mark had learned to face the past without avoiding it, which reassured Emma that he was genuinely changing. They started spending more time together outdoors, hiking, picnicking, and taking cooking classes. These activities not only allowed them to share quality time but also helped rebuild the bond that had been damaged. Together, Mark and Emma learned to cook new dishes, laughing at their kitchen mishaps and gradually rediscovering the joy they once shared. Through these moments, they found themselves reconnecting in meaningful ways, proving that even the most fractured relationships could begin to heal with patience, understanding, and genuine effort. While Emma and Mark were working to rebuild their lives, Julia decided to make a major life change. She transferred to another branch of her company, a place where she could work without being haunted by her past. Julia saw this move as an opportunity to start anew, to heal herself, and to overcome the mistakes she had made. Julia began searching for deeper values in life. She realized that love could not be built on the pain and suffering of others. She wanted to become a better person, someone capable of loving and being loved without causing harm. Julia enrolled in psychology and self-help courses to better understand herself and to improve the aspects of her character that needed growth. At her new workplace, Julia met new colleagues and started forming fresh relationships. She befriended genuine individuals who helped her recognize the importance of honesty and accountability. Julia no longer sought easy or fleeting relationships. Instead, she took the time to understand herself and explore what she truly wanted in life. She also started participating in volunteer activities, helping children and the elderly. Julia discovered that assisting others brought her joy and a sense of purpose. Through these experiences, she gradually felt herself transforming into a stronger and more responsible woman. Julia's journey was not without its challenges, but it was one of growth and redemption. She learned to face her mistakes, embrace her desire to change, and strive to live a life guided by compassion and integrity. By focusing on building a better future, Julia began to heal and pave the way for a more fulfilling life. While Mark worked hard to rebuild trust, Emma continued seeking joy and independence for herself. She knew that no matter how much Mark changed, her happiness couldn't depend solely on him. Emma kept attending yoga classes, painting, and dedicating time to self-care. She explored new experiences she had never tried before, feeling stronger than ever. Emma also started keeping a journal, recording her thoughts and emotions throughout the healing process. Her journal became a confidant, a space where she could pour out her sadness and worries. Each page marked a journey of recovery, hope, and new dreams. Emma didn't just write about the pain she had endured, but also about her aspirations for the future, the things she wanted to do, and the places she hoped to visit. One day, Emma decided to take a photography class. She had always loved beautiful photographs and wanted to learn how to capture meaningful moments herself. The class brought her new joy and creativity. Emma began wandering around the city, photographing everyday life and the simple things she had once overlooked. Each photo told a story, and through every frame, Emma felt like she was living more fully. Gradually, Emma began to feel ready to accept the past and move forward. She no longer worried or felt anxious about whether Mark might betray her again. She understood that no matter what happened, she could stand strong and find happiness on her own. The decision to give Mark a second chance no longer felt like a burden but rather a part of her journey of growth and learning to forgive. Emma's newfound strength and confidence not only allowed her to see Mark's efforts with clarity, but also gave her the assurance that her happiness would always be rooted in herself, regardless of what lay ahead. After months of effort, Emma and Mark finally felt the rebirth of their marriage. Mark's actions were no longer merely about making amends but had become daily habits, natural gestures born out of genuine love and care. He had truly changed, and Emma could feel it deeply. To celebrate this new chapter in their love, they decided to take a short trip together. They chose a peaceful seaside destination where they could enjoy some privacy and reminisce about the beautiful memories they had once shared. One evening, sitting by the shore and watching the sunset, they opened their hearts to each other. Mark told Emma that he knew how deeply he had erred but was profoundly grateful that she had given him the chance to make things right and to love her again. Emma looked at Mark, and for the first time in months, she felt true peace in her heart. She knew that nothing would ever be perfect and that new challenges would come their way. But she also knew that they had learned how to face them together. Emma felt Mark's love, and she decided not to let the past continue to hurt her. She was ready to love again, with a heart that had healed and grown stronger. The short trip allowed them to rediscover the emotions they thought they had lost. They laughed together, explored new experiences, and made plans for the future. Emma and Mark decided not to let past mistakes hold them back from living a happy life. They learned to forgive each other and themselves, creating a stronger foundation for their relationship. Returning from the trip, Emma and Mark continued to build their new life together. They set goals, from small ones like planting more trees in their garden to bigger plans like buying a new home or starting a charitable project. They moved forward step by step, and though there was still much to learn, they knew they had each other. Emma knew she had made the right choice in giving Mark a second chance. Mark understood how lucky he was to receive forgiveness from the woman he loved. Both realized that marriage isn't always perfect, but with mutual effort, they could overcome any obstacle and find love and happiness again. Their marriage was reborn, not as it had been before, but as a more mature and resilient version. Emma and Mark had faced their challenges together and emerged stronger. They knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side, with love and a deeper understanding of each other than ever before.